Hello, everyone. This is Jim Lucy, Editor-in-Chief for Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing, with episode number 128 of the Today's Electrical Economy podcast series, sponsored by Champion Fiberglass. Champion began producing epoxy fiberglass conduit and fittings in 1988, and in 1989 developed the first conduit from epoxy resins that had flame resistance and low smoke characteristics. This met the most stringent codes and specifications. In today's podcast, we'll check out the latest electrical price index from Electrical Marketing, and we'll report on some truly monstrous data center projects that are now in the pipeline. We'll also check out some weekly economic indicators that can give a sense of where the U.S. economy and electrical market may be headed. These 5 weekly indicators are initial unemployment claims at the state level, rail freight car traffic, the Baker Hughes rig count, oil prices, and copper prices. Our thanks to Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring today's Electrical Economy podcast series for 2025. For the week ending September the 13th, the advanced figure for seasonally adjusted initial unemployment claims was 231,000. That's a decrease of 33,000 from the previous week's revised level. The unemployment rate for August was 4.3%, and that is in line with the recent readings over the past few months, although it's up just a tick over the last summer readings. We had 5 states with unemployment claims drops of at least 1,000, which I always consider to be a pretty significant number when it hits that 1,000 figure. Texas had the largest drop in claims, with 5,012 fewer claims, now sitting at 26,938. Connecticut's claims were down 4,389, now sitting at 2,639. Michigan was down 3,956, now sitting at 4,485. New Jersey down 1,153, now sitting at 7,668. Illinois now at 9,075, down 1,104 claims, and California with a large number of claims, but they did lose some, down 811, now sitting 36,303. We did have 3 states that had increases of over 1,000. They were New York, up 1,613, now sitting at 14,463. South Carolina down 1,130, now sitting at 2,995. Massachusetts up 1,107, now sitting at 4,699. Others in the the top 5, Virginia up 949 claims at 3,538, and Indiana up 316 claims, now sitting at 2,654. One of my favorite leading economic indicators is freight rail traffic. It's compiled every week by the American Association of Railroads, or AAR. It's a leading indicator because it measures the amount of raw materials and finished goods being shipped by rail. Over the past year or two, it's been one of the more bullish indicators, and it's been consistently up year over year. I always kind of like this indicator too because there's a very busy freight line along one of my favorite running routes in the Kansas City area, and I always, just to pass the time while I'm putting in my miles, I do like to count the freight cars from time to time. But it is interesting to see how many different types of freight are on there, whether it's coal or oil or intermodal containers or automobiles, and also to see some of the many companies that are on there. Certainly seeing a lot more Amazon containers on there over the past couple of years. For the week ending September the 13th, total U.S. weekly rail traffic was back over 500,000, with 514,167 carloads and intermodal units. That is down 1.6% compared with the same week last year. It slipped below the 500,000 figure of the previous week. Any week over 500,000 carloads and intermodal units is solid, and we now have quite a few weeks in a row over the 500,000 mark, if you take away that one week, which I believe included some of the Labor Day decline in traffic. Total combined U.S. traffic for the first 37 weeks of 2025 also showing an increase. Total carloads and intermodal units for those first 37 weeks, 18,202,657 carloads and intermodal units. That is an increase of 3.1% compared to last year. Most of the key freight categories were in the green in the most recent data. Grain topped the list with a 5.9% year-over-year increase from this time last year. Coal was also up 5.1%. Total intermodal units, probably the largest category, up 4%. The only two that the major categories that were down a bit, metal ores and minerals down 1.6%, followed by petroleum products down 0.9%. If you track the oil market, you're probably familiar with the Baker Hughes rig count, which tracks the oil and gas rigs that are operating. The data is available by state, by basin, and nationally at www.rigcount.bakerhughes.com. This slide gives you an idea of the largest oil and gas deposits. It gives you a really good sense of just how many of the large oil plays are in Texas and Oklahoma, and how big an area the Marcellus gas region covers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and parts of West Virginia. Total oil and gas rigs were up by 2 rigs, with an increase on the oil side of the equation. Total count was down 51 rigs for an 8.6% drop year over year. Texas total rig count is up 1 rig and down 30 rigs year over year for a 10.9% drop. The Eagle Ford Basin picked up 3 rigs and now stands at 42 operating rigs. That still is a 16.4% drop compared to last year. With 296 rigs, the Permian and Texas's Eagle Ford Basin account for more than half of all oil and gas production currently in the United States. There's no big changes in oil prices as they're still tracking under their year-over-year average of $68.49 average price. The September 16 price, $64.28. Economists like to call copper pricing Dr. Copper because it's a leading economic indicator for future business activity since copper is used in so many industries. The construction industry is among the leading markets for copper because of its use in wire and cable and copper plumbing pipe. After some monstrous price swings that pushed the red metal way over $5 a pound because of tariff concerns, so far in September, copper settled down into a narrow band between $4.50 and $4.65. The September 16 price was $4.64. Now let's take a look at some electrical pricing trends in the monthly electrical price index published by Electrical Marketing. This electrical price index tracks over 20 key electrical product groups, and it's available as part of a $99 subscription to Electrical Marketing. For more information on receiving the price index and all the other data and news that we have in Electrical Marketing, go to www.electricalmarketing.com. Well, first, if you look at the total reading in July, it's up 1.1% month to month. That was well over the historical monthly average of 0.2%. But if you look in August, the most recent data, total index dropped back to 0.3% to 221 points. Let's look at some of the categories of electrical products that saw the most. The product areas that showed the biggest monthly gains were motors with a 3.5% increase, electrical measuring and integrated test instruments, 1.4% increase, wiring Dyson connectors, smaller increase, under 1%. I usually use that 1% as a dividing line between large increases and some of the more mundane. But wiring Dyson connectors were up 0.8%, metal conduit up 0.7%, and circuit breakers up 0.5%. When you look over the year-over-year gainers for the total index, as well as some of the key categories, again, total index up 5.1% gain. It always tracks a bit higher than the month-to-month index, as you can imagine. Switchgear looking with the highest price increase, over 11.9% over August of 2024. Fuses were up 10.5%. Building wire and cable up 10.2% over the August figures of last year. Panel boards and switches up 9.6% over this time last year. Circuit breakers up 9.5%, and industrial controls up 9.1%. I was updating Electrical Marketing Newsletter's database of new construction projects in the pipeline or breaking ground, and once again I was shocked by just how big these new data centers are getting. It used to be that a data center with $1 billion in total contract value was big. The rule of thumb is that electrical products usually account for about 10% of that total contract value, and it does depend on the project. But I found 18 data centers of that size of over $1 billion that had broken ground or got into the news with the proposals since June, with a total contract value over $1 billion. 13 of those new projects, over $10 billion in total contract value. I've seen estimates in the electrical equipment of data center can easily account for 20% of the project's total contract value. When you do the math, you can see how just big an area these data centers are for electrical products and the opportunities they could possibly represent. Let's take a look at some of the largest. When I was putting together that list, the biggest one that came up right in my backyard, just north of the Kansas City airport, I'm in the Kansas City area, announced in August 2025, the Project Kestrel data center, which was announced by the Port of Kansas City, came in at over $100 billion in total contract value. That does include roads and some other associated construction, but it's still one massive project. The next one in line, still very big by any type of historical standards. This one in Arizona, proposal we got information on it in August. It's in Eloy, Arizona. Vermaland proposal for the La Osa data center project. Another project over 30 million and up is the track proposed Mooresville Technology Center, Mooresville, North Carolina. I believe that's in the Charlotte area. I have heard that this is getting a lot of local opposition, so I'm not sure if this one's really going to come through. Again, it is just the proposal stage. New Albany, Ohio, planning stage is July 2025. You see New Albany, there's quite a few data centers in. This is roughly in the center of the state, not far from Columbus, but there was a $28 billion Google data center expansion. Earlier this year, we heard about the projects that Amazon announced statewide in Pennsylvania. This was back in June. They said they would be building $20 billion worth of data centers in Pennsylvania. Another big one, in this one in Texas, in Sulphur Springs, breaking ground in July. The Matrix Data Center campus, $18.7 billion. In Louisa County, Virginia, we all know Virginia for Loudoun County, the home of so many of the big data center projects. This one, a slightly different area of the state. Plans announced 2025, $17 billion, a 3.9 million square foot data center campus. Just going over the data centers that are over 10 billion. In Bessemer, Alabama, the Project Marvel Data Storage Center, 14.4 billion. In Chicago, actually, a two in this ranking here of the largest ones. Planning stages 2025. The Clayco Compute Data Center renovation. Back in Kansas City, design phase announced in July. The Red Wolf Data Center, $12 billion, another biggie. Going up Hoffman Estates, not too far outside of the Chicago city limits. Planning stages 2025, and that is Compass Data Centers. We have back in Kansas City again. We have funding approved in June of 2025. This one, a Google Project Mica Data Center, announced by the Port of Kansas City, and it's $10 billion. And the other $10 billion project, this one again, Amazon, Hamlet, North Carolina, design phase announced July 2025. Well, that wraps up our presentation for today. I just wanted to give a shout out to the folks at Champion Fiberglass again for sponsoring this series of podcasts, and they've been doing it for over 100 episodes over the past 5 years. Had a nice chat while I was at NECA with Scott Patchen from Champion, and we got talking about data centers, and he says he always has to remind some of his younger salespeople that what we're seeing in data centers is a once-in-a-career type of thing, the amount of electrical opportunity, and it's not something that a 20-year-old right now might be expecting happens all the time. But good to talk with Scott and the rest of the team at Champion, and again, thank you very much to the company for sponsoring us over the years. If you need any other information on any of the projects or data that we discussed here, give me a call directly or email me. You can catch me at jlucy@endeavorb2b.com, phone number 913-461-7679. Until then, I'll be talking with you in 2 weeks, and be happy, be healthy. I look forward to talking with you in a couple weeks.